Hi, my name is Corme. I mostly main a Restoration Shaman inside Mythic Plus. This is my cat Messy, who's going to be bugging me the whole time. And today I'm going to give you a commentary on a 26 Sanguine depths we ran last week with the affixes Tyrannical, Bursting Volcanic. Bursting Volcanic, super easy in here, but of course Sanguine depths has probably the hardest bosses this tier to heal. And since we're going to be pushing by Tyrannical IO, I thought this would be a good video for me to start with for this season. So before we get started on the commentary, which I'm going to kind of skip around during, I'm going to give you a bit of an idea of the gear and the build I'm wearing, because it's a bit different than I think from last season's for sure, and also it's a bit different from maybe what other shamans are running right now. Let's give you an idea of my gear. Here it is. I'm wearing 4-piece, and then I run the Chains of Devastation Lego, and of course I have Unity on. In addition to that, I run talents that are a bit different than most people, or I shouldn't say most people, I should say different from last season. Most people would run Undulation and Ascendance, whereas I usually opt to run Unleash and High Tide. The reason I like playing this way, especially in a dungeon like Sanguine Depths, is because there needs to be like a lot of healing while you're on the move on all 3 bosses, or even on the second boss. You're not so much moving, but it's good to be able to get like weave in like the chain lightnings at the same time. If you're gaming it correctly, I like High Tide a lot better for these bosses because you need pretty constant throughput. Like you have to heal like at least 3 or 4 orb bases on the first boss, like 3 or 4 adds on the second boss, and then you're gonna have to heal a couple of the running around phases on Barilla. And for all of these, I like having the High Tide if you're playing it correctly, and saving the High Tide procs for those heavy healing moments. You're tracking how much mana you're spending is actually really good, and that's what I'm going to try and show you guys inside this video. And then of course I'm running Mykonikos. The only thing that's a little bit different from most of the time when you have Mykonikos for me is that I like having the extra potency with Nature's Focus when I'm playing this way. Hammer Genesis is really good for damage, especially on fortified weeks, but on tyrannical weeks it's going to be less impactful, of course. And then I'm usually going for a bit more crit and burst instead of haste, even though haste is normally better for a single target damage for a tyrannical week. The extra crit for getting back your Vesper totem, and then also the burst just for being able to live some of these bosses is also really good in my opinion. But yeah, let's get into the video. Okay, so here are coming out of the gate. We have a Brewmaster Pika, and then we have a Destro Warlock, a Havoc Demon Hunter, and then a Survival Hunter. The Survival Hunter is playing Short Turtle, so it's kind of the same as having a Rogue for the third boss, which is really important that you have enough immunities. That's one of the things you want to check before you go into a high Sanguine Depths, if you have enough immunities. But third boss, on this first part, you're just going to be putting down my Vesper Totem. I'm going to use my Trinket. I have a Crit Trinket. I usually go back and forth between running the Crit Trinket and running the Trinket off the second boss inside the raid, Das End, the reservoir. But the Crit is really good if you play it correctly for getting back your Vesper Totem. If you're spamming your Chain Heals and Chain Lightnings, as you see, I already got it back, and we're only like 30 seconds into the poll. Or I should say I got it back in about 20 seconds because I didn't put it down until about 10 seconds into combat. So you can back really quickly, and I'm already close to having it back again. Of course, we do have Herb rolling right now, and by the time we get to the next pack, it's going to come back. So normally what we do here, we get Woe, or if we have Rogue, we just Invis skip past this, or we just Shroud. So we skip this guy. If I remember correctly, that thing pulls. Maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, okay, I do remember correctly. Okay, yeah, someone pulled it. So this was a couple days ago, so my memory's a bit foggy. So when you get in here, you mostly just get assignments on these ticks to kick, and because you still have the buff from the urn, this pull is pretty easy. Like I said, it's not fortified, these axes are not crazy, all you really have to worry about is bursting. And then since, like, as a pack I'm most packs are still alive, I pretty much have a really easy time healing bursting with this build, because I always have like the free chain heals and especially the High Tide proc saved up. So that's really good. I'm going to skip this part a little bit though, because I don't think that this part really needs a lot of watching. Oh, so I went backwards in there. Okay, so we ended up dragging the brutes to the next pack, and then we're just getting these ticks down and just healing through them. And then we're gonna get an here again to also help us with this bursting. Really helps a lot with bursting. Okay, so we're finishing out this brute, and we're gonna go in the back. I don't quite have Vesper Totem up yet. Sometimes I have it on pull, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I do save it for when we have the orb phases, sometimes I don't. It just depends on how much healing I'm gonna have there. Most of the time I don't really need it, especially on this first one. We don't really tend to worry about it because the pretty popular strategy for this boss is to get and then kill him just in time for when the orbs are going off. Normally we just get it low and then we wait for our Brewmaster to touch Touch of Death and to get it down so that we usually get really good timing. If I remember correctly, we ended up killing this one a little bit early, although it doesn't really matter. If you kill it like right after the orbs go off, I think that's the most ideal because then it'll top you and it also kind of carries over into his first Hungry Drain if you do it that way. Sorry, my cat is so annoying. Yeah, you're just gonna see me soaking the orbs and we're just letting heal us in this one. This one is really, really easy. The first charge and then this charge are usually the ones where I don't want anybody to use any immunities because they're really easy to heal. I want people to save their immunities for the later ones. So yeah, even though Cass does have an immunity that he can use. Oh, he did Turtle already, it looks like. Oh, no, he did. So I'm looking at a different CD. Even though he has his Turtle available, he's not going to use it. So I did put Vesper Totem down there. I did use it. I don't feel like I'm going to need it for this next one because I have Wall for myself and everybody still has their defensives because we used on the first one. So just gonna see me Chain Lightning and Chain Healing. I also tell my Warlock at this point, I'm like, hey, make sure you try and, because he's not used to playing with the Shaman necessarily, most people are playing with Priest, make sure you try to stay in melee so that when I'm Chain Healing, I can just cleave off you. As you see, I soak all the orbs, I don't need anybody else to do it, and I didn't have to press Spirit Walker's Grace, and I'm doing enough healing to keep us nice and topped, and that's basically how every single one is gonna go. This used to be a dungeon where I used to always want to run short Spirit Walker's Grace, but since I started doing this, for the most part, I always just run Nature's Guardian to get the extra healing. Both were really good. I just used to like it because it was hard to always trust a range DPS. So this one got a little bit scary because I got knocked back into an orb behind me, and then also our tank always instant soaks in. So like at the beginning it was a little bit spooky, but then now we're pretty much fine. I always wait on that last orb until after the Hungry Drain. I used to get really greedy about getting all 5 orbs really fast, and the Hungry Drain would go off and be like, oh my god. So it's much better if you can take it slow, and it's like I said, I like this way because I don't have to rely on a ranged DPS to do the soaking for me. That is something that I did not always like. So we're gonna get one more here. So I do still have my Earth Ellie up, I don't have Wall, and I do have Healing Tide if I need it, but as I recall, I don't think I put down Healing Tide. The one thing about this build that is a little bit counterintuitive is that it does heavily incentivize you greeting some of your totems. Just for damage purposes, like if you want to do the most damage, usually you're trying to greed like your Healing Tide and your Spirit Link Totem because they're 3-minute CDs. Same with Monotide, although I do use Monotide as like an emergency heal for sure. Because you don't want to waste the CDR that you're getting on all the chain heals you're casting on those. You would rather have it be used on Vesper Totem. That Volcanic was almost tragic, I forgot about that. That was almost so troll. Yeah, from here, I definitely have the CDs to heal because I have Wall, I have Healing Tide Totem, I have Cloudburst and everything, but we just decided to kite it because it's just easier. And when you have a Brewmaster, it's like really easy to kite this and even get another orb set and then kite all the way around. We've definitely done that on keys before where we've gotten another one. We actually have a really good single target in this dungeon because of the Havoc Demon Hunter. But sometimes when we have the Rogue, we'll get that one and then we'll get another set and we kind of have to like speed taunt around and it gets really spooky. Okay, so for this next pull, we have our Brewmaster is going to go and get the Cleave guy and a bunch of casters. We need to get kicks. This comp is a little bit tricky because you don't have another Curse spell, so whenever I get silenced, like myself and the Warlock get silenced and I can't do anything about it. So we often are CCing the Curse of Suppression because once you CC that, it doesn't recast. Whereas Rock Soul, when you do CC it, it does recast. So you usually just kick Rock Soul and you try and rotate stuns on the Curse of Suppression. Also, I try and use this lip sometimes over here to line, but when the Craggy Fracture is going up at the same time, it backfires a little bit. As I recall, I tried to do that and I got hit. But since it's not fortified, I lipped. And it was completely fine. Yeah, as soon as you get in the pack, I start hitting that. I'm going and trying to line, because I think I saw one casting on me, but then we interrupted it. They're casting again. Both go on him that time, so I just dispel them. And then, yeah, like I said, this kind of backfires. So on a fortified week, I would get heavily punished for doing that. But since it's only a Tyran week, it doesn't matter. I'm going to skip ahead of it. We're just going to focus down the rest of the Chamber Sentinel. And then right now, our tank is going and he's getting the Rock Biters back here. It's really important that when these come in, that he has either he has ample threat, or as soon as they're starting getting pulled in, and you're going to see us doing this anyways, we're all going to get in this cubby and line because they'll start throwing rocks at random people and you'll die. Yeah, right here we're going to open the urn and you get lots of stacks from the little guys, and then after we do that is usually we just, in this case, we Viz pot through. This skip tends to go pretty badly. a lot of times if you have a warlock who doesn't know what they're doing, especially like if they don't get rid of like implode their imps or whatever it is. So that's something you have to look out for. But other than that, this pack is pretty straightforward. I'm gonna skip ahead again. I think we all know what to do here. Just kick. Oh yeah, I dispelled someone's bursting and then he still had the dot, so now we're just sitting here waiting until I can dispel him so we can go. Nice to invis. On this next guy, we like to get him low and then we'll pull in the next pack. On this, you want to try and make sure that you and whatever other ranged DPS is in the room stack together so that the melee know where the sweep and slash is getting baited the whole time. So you're gonna see me constantly moving on the warlock. This isn't a warlock that we usually run with that much, so he keeps trying to move from me, but I'm gonna keep moving to him because I want our melee to only have to pay attention to one direction and just know that like, oh, this is where my range is standing. I just need to make sure I'm not standing here. Getting low here was definitely not intentional. It's really common for us to get the guys that we don't want here. Yep, and so now we're bringing in the warden and then the two scribes. These scribes are normally really scary on 4 to 5 weeks, but they're not that scary this week. And then usually for the warden, most of the time I would just solo the kicks, but because we have a demon hunter and he gets a lot from kicking, whenever he's there, I usually just let them call kicks and I'll like back up a bit. But other than that, when there's not, if there's just like a rogue or something, I'll often just be like, oh, I'm gonna solo the warden. And then if for some reason I miss a kick or something, then we can use Tiger's Lust if it's up to get them out. Yeah, pretty straightforward there. Our strat after that is we do these next few pulls and then we do the pat, and then we'll end up going back to the urn in the back and then doing this urn right here and then taking a 10 stack into the boss. I'm gonna kind of fast forward to that because I think most of this trash is pretty straightforward. The only thing to kick in here is the Remnant of Fury, and if you miss the kick, you're just gonna curse to spell it because you're a shaman. If you're watching this, I hope you are. Okay, yeah. So now what we're doing is, so normally we pull this pack and then we pull the pat. Normally we plan ahead and we would have CC'd the pat at some point, but we didn't plan ahead, so we're actually gonna end up pulling this pack if I remember correctly instead. If it's a fortified week, we usually will stop and we'll wait for the pat because it's better for time. But I think just because it's like a tyrannical week, it doesn't matter, we'll just pull this. The thing about this pack is that the Depth Warden has a lot of HP and he does not contribute to your stacks from the Anima Collector thing, so it's just not that efficient of a pack compared to just pulling the pat where you get 3 stacks right there. Obviously you're gonna get 10 stacks no matter what when you go into the other urn. However, going into that urn with more stacks makes it more likely that you'll be able to get one down in order to refresh your buff. Yeah, so in this Depth Warden you're probably mostly gonna see me getting all the kicks I can. It's just like depending on how much uptime the Demon Hunter can keep if they're going back and forth calling kicks. Yeah, we finished this. We also get a free out of this, which I like a lot, because on these packs I get a little bit greedy with spamming chain heal and stuff like that, wanting to get my best return back, because I end up doing a really good amount of damage with this buff. Let's get ahead of it. So he went ahead and he's gonna go pull the Depth Warden. Whenever he pulls this, it's really important that I go up there with him and I kick it. So I don't want to attack anything, I don't want to pull any threat because he doesn't have any threat on anything. I just want to make sure I get the kick on that Barb Shackle. And we also pull the guy out of the cage back here, and this is usually the mob that like a DPS can even tank it. So what we end up doing is using that for the most part in order to refresh the buff, because like we can start DPSing it down while our tank is going ahead and getting the other mobs so that it dies first, and then we get a refresh on our buff. And even though the Depth Warden might die last, it's normally fine. We lose a little bit of time, like I said. Depth Wardens don't give you a stack, and then if you end up getting like the bad gargoyle or whatever, he does give a stack. And we like if it's the gargoyle that's near the boss, we'll just pull him into this pull instead of the pull we did earlier. Your route in here kind of changes a tiny bit every single time depending on where those gargoyles are. And again, like that pat I said, sometimes we CC it, sometimes we don't. It just depends. So now we're gonna go to the boss. Okay, go in the boss. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to lust. Sometimes I click it, sometimes I hit F1, it just depends. And since I'm running the trinket from Theater of Pain, I usually cast my trinket off of one of the relics when we go into a pool like this. I'm not sure if I did there. I can't quite see it right now because my camera that I had when I was streaming is covering it up for some reason. It's a little bit hard for me to track. Apologies on that. You just mostly want to make sure on this first one, nothing is really scary because you have 10 stacks. Yeah, I have my trinket up right now. I can see it. You have 10 stacks. I already have my Vesper Totem back. I can't remember if I save it or not for the ad. I usually like to save it for the ad. But I definitely lost like a lot of damage there. Like I probably lost one use during this fight by not putting it down there immediately when we had the herb buff. But I do really like it for when the ad comes out because that's when you need the extra damage and the extra healing at the same time, and it's definitely a safety play. And this boss is completely melting because we make sure we get the 10 stacks. The 10 stacks only have 2 seconds on them though, so then after this is when it actually starts getting scary. Whenever it goes on the hunter, he usually just feigns it, but here he didn't have feign because he also got the last one, so he ends up turtling that one. And the next manifestation comes out. I usually like to always try and keep something that's really important about if you're playing Chains of Devastation is to do your best to keep your healing rain down, because then that's going to contribute to your 2-piece, and so then you'll get more CDR from your chain heal and all that. So this part got really scary because the ad died and the circle was going out at the same time. The person at the circle like isn't like they're usually pretty focused on living, so they're not always self-aware to know like, oh, I need to take like 10 steps backwards because me and the demon hunter both got trapped there. Our demon hunter did another there to live, and then I was kind of just like skirting the edge in order to live. Basically, you want to make sure that every single time it goes, like whenever there's like the castigate and the ad going out at the same time, that you have a cloudburst already down, so that's going to detonate hopefully sometime during the ad, especially if it lives long. You want to detonate during the ad, and you already have a healing rain down at the same time. So this one is about to be a coalesce coming down. I get hit. I'm not doing a great job of preparing for these just because they seem to be dying pretty quickly, and instead I'm using the cloudburst to just heal as soon as they go down. Definitely not my most peak gameplay, I would say. I'd say that when I'm like way more scared and these things are living a lot longer, that I usually put it down a bit earlier and try to juice it up a tiny bit so that when it goes off it does a lot of healing. But in a case like this where you just need not as much healing and you just want to use the free chain heal, especially since I'm trying to save my high tide procs for when they come out, that's also good too. Both those things work. It's kind of the weird thing about high tide is if you want to pre-put a cloudburst on, you might end up, you're not really wasting the high tide proc because any overhealing is still going to get converted into your cloudburst healing later on. It's just obviously not as efficient as using both the high tide procs during the damage when people are taking damage. So there's not always like a perfect way to play it. It doesn't always work out optimally, but I find that it works well, and that for every single one of those sets that I had enough throughput to get us through, and that's what counts. So in this next room, you're going to see our hunter is going to go up and he's going to reset the boss. This means that we can, it depends on when they feign. If they feign late enough, then you get the free relic set. If they feign right away, then you won't get the relic set. But it's also really nice because you get the relic set, and then you can group everything up super duper easily this way. You see, I just get the kick on the fire oppressor, and then everything's grouped up. This pole, the one thing I will say is that there are too many kicks. People are holding CDs for the boss, especially since we just got done with another boss, so they might not even have them up. And then they end up using their CDs. So like something that will happen a lot is we'll get on this pole, and then the rogue will get 2 things, and I'll get silenced, and the rogue will cloak, and we always want to cloak the first one, and that becomes a problem for the boss. So that's kind of like my one thing where I don't really like this pull, is I feel like it ends up eating an unnecessary amount of defensives that I would have wanted to have from the get-go on the boss. Because it's really nice to use your defensives on the first set and then have reset the CD on them later. For relics on this boss, I equally like and Woe. And I almost died right there. See, like, I'm really greeting my wall. I am really greeting my wall, and I'm lucky I did not get punished for it. But I really want my wall for the first one, and I'd rather just get res than use it. Because dying on a boss means using a battle res, and I don't want to do that. For this boss, I think and Woe are equally good. So Woe is really good, especially if you have less immunities. I think Woe is super duper good. So that if people only get 3 orbs, they can still live without a defensive. And then of course is good because it provides healing. I've never seen it line up correctly to where you get the healing during the like running around phase while she's like spawning all the swirlies during Endless Torment. People always say like, oh yeah, it's really good, but I've never seen someone successfully do that. It never happens. What always happens is you have it like this, and then the boss does its little like tank buster thing, and the is hitting on it, and the tank just starts screaming, hey, kill the either that or it just gets cleaved down really fast like it does right here. It has also killed our tank in the past, and then that just like cascaded because we had to use all of our immunities to live while we got him up and stuff like that. So I'm like, meh, I don't know, like it obviously helps the boss die a lot quicker, but I think Woe is sometimes a better choice. You can see I'm gonna try and stay in Ghost Whip. Like whenever the group is really healthy going into this, I'm saying Ghost Whip. You can see that the Cloud Burst is gonna go off right now, so I always try and put a Cloud Burst down early. And then if I have the ability to, I put a Cloud Burst down again during this just to get the free chain heal. And something that I'm not doing a lot of is, it depends on, sometimes when we're running around like that, I will use my free chain lightning, set a free chain lightning right there in order to get the free chain heal in order to do healing. But if I don't need to, I won't, because I want to try and conserve mana for later on. Because this is such a high key and requires so much healing, sometimes I do tend to go here. See, we have wall up, I'm sitting in Ghost Whip, I'll take almost no damage here. I'll cast this Healing Surge. I put it down another Cloud Burst, which eats my High Tide and does a good amount of healing. And basically what you want to do is you just want to use your free Riptides, put up your Unleash Life, because Unleash Life is actually a pretty decent instant cast heal. And then if you need to, you use Chain Lightning to get a free chain heal proc. You'll see me doing that on the later ones for sure, but on these early ones I'm not happy to do it yet to help us live. Something I should also talk about is on the first one we did, we had Turtle. On the second one we did, we had Nether. And then on the third one, we're like rotating different CDs and stuff like that. You're gonna see that our Warlock right there, he's seeded. I think, if I remember correctly, he said, oh, I'm gonna get 3 and hit something and I'll live, and then he didn't end up living. The kind of danger with that though that he was talking about is he was worried that when he came out of the seed, if there was a swirly underneath him, he was gonna live, but we were lucky that nothing spawned under him. Sometimes what you do have to do on this fight on like a high key is be like, oh, I'm going to onk this one, I'm going to seed this one, I'm going to die, and we're going to battle rest someone, because that means only one person dies or one person has to use their thing instead of multiple people doing it if people don't have the defensives to live. What you do as a shaman usually is you wall the first one, then you Earth Ellie the next 2, as you see I have Earth Ellie up, and then you'll wall again. It was a little bit different for me that time because I walled the first one, the next one I just got to stay in Ghost Whip and stuff like that, so I didn't feel like I needed to Earth Ellie. And then the next after that I had wall back because of that will always happen if you're not running and then after that I Earth Ellie the next 2. So it just kind of depends on like the context of how healthy your group is, if you can use Ghost Whip as a defensive, or if you need to pop out and you need to heal and top people and actually like juice stuff up for people to live. You also have to think about the fact, like, if you are staying in Ghost Whip, like I am right now, or I got out of it because I decided I wanted to heal, that means that people aren't getting Ancestral Vigor from you. So that's something else you need to be like aware of, is if I'm staying in Ghost Whip, if I'm not healing, even if they're topped, they might still die because they don't have the extra 10% for my Ancestral Vigor, and you just have to like kind of like know. And most of the time my teammates are saying something like, oh, I'm pressing this, I'm getting 3 orbs, or oh, I'm only getting 4 orbs and I'm only getting 3 orbs, I'm barely gonna live, I don't know if I'm gonna live. But that's the kind of thing that's gonna let you know if you need to pop out and do something like that. As you can see, the tank also gets fucked. Sorry, I shouldn't say that word. He's taking a lot of damage here, and I'm pretty oob at the end here. So this is what I was saying with on this boss. Towards the end, the last couple, you saw me using the chain heal to heal, which is really efficient when you have the high tide procs. But early on, I wasn't doing as much because I know during this fight that it's easy to go I don't find that this is like any more mana intense than it was before the Lego though, if that makes sense, just because like healing surge spamming is just as bad as chain heal spamming, and you have to spam a lot more chain heals than, I mean sorry, a lot more healing surge than chain heals inside of high tide procs in order to top the group. So it's about the same as I expect, but it's just why I wasn't as aggressive as I was on the first 2 bosses with using my Lego in that way. It's also really nice on packs like this where we have a lot of rack soul debuffs, and as you're going to see inside the gauntlet when we have a lot of the bleeds and stuff going on, I also really like this Lego. So right here we're going to, as I remember, we invis, and I think we have to like summon our tank or something because his belt fails and it turns into a fiasco. So skip a little bit of that, yeah. Whole fiasco situation where he just ends up coming through anyways. Okay. Let's go on this first boss. So what's scary about this room this week is that some of these things do burst, and if they are bursting and the Wicked Gash is going off, it is terrifying because it's really hard to top your entire team while that's happening. And so you have to like, so there's times during the gauntlet that I say to my teammates, hey, like bursting's going out, Wicked Gash is going out, I can't top you all right now even though it's about to go out, I need you guys to pop something. So that's the thing that you have to look out for. So we kill Herb right here. Another thing to note about the Wicked Gash is not everyone knows this. I even did a key, like there was like a 25 the other day and someone didn't know this. They changed the way the Gash works from season 1 and they changed it halfway through last season. So there's no way to dodge it anymore. It used to be that if people just got out of melee, nobody would get it basically. However, the way it is now is that it always targets someone and it's always like guaranteed unless they dodge it when she jumps on them, it's always going to go on them. And if you're stacking with anyone, then that's when it's going to, then they're also going to get that. It used to be like, it was, you didn't get it as a range basically unless you were standing in melee. Now when you get targeted as a range and she jumps on you, you're the one that gets a bleed instead of her cleaving before she jumps out, which is how it used to be, which is why like the melee would just like get out. It is still important that people don't stack when it's going out, but it's not the same thing where it's like, oh, your melee need to get out of melee and not hit the boss anymore. It's just now like they can be in melee, they just can't be stacked anymore, and it also means there's a lot more healing for you to do because you don't get to dodge the debuffs anymore. So we're also getting a bat because we didn't get quite enough count. And then we saw that right there, our Hunter and our Warlock were stacked, but then the Hunter Kyrian potted the debuff off. So right here we're getting bursting and it's going out again. This is where I tell my team, hey, you need to pop something. And he dies. He did have turtle, but like he didn't have like a whole lot of like time to react to me saying that like, hey, we're getting bursting and the Wicked Gash is going out. It's just kind of unlucky for him. Right here, we're opening the urn again. We're pulling in the Dark Acolytes. It's important that you use your Cap Totem here to try and interrupt if you can. And other than that, it's pretty chill. The rest of this hallway on a Tyrannical week is really chill. On Fortified, it's a lot scarier, especially if it was like bursting Fortified with the Wicked... Actually, I don't think the Wicked Gash scales up for it. I'm probably wrong about that. Yeah, this is all pretty easy. We're like pretty much chilling on time, so we're playing like really safe. For the most part. Like they definitely like padding, so I like pulling things together, but like it's really chill, really safe. I think we're gonna pull the Huntsman's Lodge pretty soon. It's not really what it's called, that's from Waycrest. Yeah. When we get to this boss, because we have so much time, I tell my group kill the woe, because this is a boss where woe is actually really good for the movement speed and the DR, because some people like the only way you deplete from this point is if people die, they mess up, they sit in a line, they don't dodge. Sometimes people stack on top of each other and they get each other killed and stuff like that happens. So if you have extra time here, I highly suggest you just say, hey guys, let's kill the woe, because it's a lot safer and it's a lot easier. But yeah, that's basically it. As I recall, like after the woe goes off, I think we have a couple deaths that kind of make our time a little bit worse. Yeah, we definitely lost battle raises. But it's like not a big deal. And still finishes the boss. Boss is not too scary on Tyrannical is your melee, is your DPS what they're doing. With melee, if they know what they're doing, they can make it so she doesn't charge the second time, or like she charges late in melee so that you have like more time to dodge. I don't exactly know how it works because I'm not a melee. I would suggest going and watching one of these high melee players if you are a melee and learning how to do that, because it's pretty useful. Yeah, other than that, that's the key. I hope you learned something. Thank you for watching. This was a bit less formal than I think my last ones. I tried to be a bit more chatty and skip around instead of commentating like every single little thing I did because we're so late into the expansion. I don't really think I need to do that. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll be commentating other dungeons. Let me know if there's one that you're really interested in seeing next. Thank you.